Hey everyone, Boardgame Brody here with Meeple Mountain. I have a prototype copy of Copan, Dying City, and I know everyone else is saying it differently, but I have visited the ruins myself and even lived in that country, which is Honduras, for 2 years. And so it's Copan. It's the newest worker placement game by Holy Grail Games. Copan, again, which I have visited in real life, once was a flourishing city of the Mayan civilization. In the game, we go back to that time when the city was flourishing. Players each represent a ruling family who holds many opportunities to increase their influence and wealth. But you should know, dark times lie ahead. You might be climbing up the ladder to secure your legacy, but the city of Copan itself, it's declining. In the game, this is represented by dwindling resources and crumbling political structures, natural disasters, and war. The game is a worker placement game of gathering resources and spending them to take actions at one of the 5 sites. Actions will grant bonuses, more resources, and most importantly, victory points, and these sites all combo into each other. Then the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins. So let's talk game mechanics now and how to actually play the game. Players will take turns moving in a clockwise order until the end of the game. Each turn includes 2 mandatory phases which must be performed in order. First, the court phase, where you will first place a court tile on any empty space on any of the 4 sections of the pyramid. These don't need to be placed on the outside edge or be connected to a previously placed tile. They can be placed anywhere. But you probably want to place it where you will gain the most or the best resources that you want or need. Placing the tile next to another already placed out tile or on a space that grants you more resources is probably a good move to do so. You also can trigger events that change the landscape of potential cards out on the board. After placing your court tile, you will move the decline cube of the decline track of the same resource shown on the tile that you placed. This will change how many resources that you collect of that resource. At the beginning of each game, each icon gives you 2 of those resources, but slowly dwindle, receiving 1 and then none. Next, if you triggered an event by placing your court tile on top of a space with this symbol, you will perform it immediately. All character cards on Site 3 and all the altar cards on Site 4 are discarded and replaced with new ones. If there are any player tokens on the Site 4, they are moved to the space to the left of the site. The fate die is then rolled and its icon will trigger an effect shown on this card here. And this card can be changed each time that you play the game, and it adds variety to curtail the game how you want to play it for that sitting. The choice of card might cause the game to be longer or shorter. It might cause the game to be more negative effects on there, or another will have more positive things happen. So changing this card up is a great way to change the game every now and again. And this isn't the only way to trigger events, but also when a decline cube moves across a threshold of the decline tracker to a new tier, or reaches the final space, the fate die is then rolled and you will again refer to the event card to apply its effects. So be ready for those. But when a cube crosses a decline threshold on that site, the one impacted by the corresponding decline track, you will close the spaces with the matching symbol as the one rolled on the fate die. This place is now closed for business. The food decline track affects Site 1, or the embassies. The fame decline track affects Site 3, or the ball court. The zeal decline track affects Site 4, or the altars. And the power decline track affects the full bar, or the hieroglyphic stairs. There are 4 resources available in the game. Food represents your ability to feed your allies, as well as your general wealth and trading prospects. Fame represents your family's notoriety and reputation amongst the general population, and how likely you are to attract skilled followers. Zeal represents your spiritual fervor and your ability to leverage the priesthood and religious calendars of the city. Power represents your family's political influence within Copan and your position in the ruling hierarchy. It is possible that multiple events are triggered at once. If that does happen, then the fate die is only rolled once for the first event. The event card effects are only applied once per turn, but the events, when you move tiers on the decline track, occur one after another, with the corresponding spaces on each site becoming closed. Each decline track can trigger up to 3 of these types of events total over the course of the game. If a cube on the decline track should be moved but can't because it's at the end of its track, then the next track in clockwise direction moves a cube instead. Finally, for this phase, you will activate the court tile you placed, but you not only activate it, but all the orthogonally adjacent court tiles amongst it. You will visit each decline track to see how many of those resources you will collect. This will be 2, 1, or none. You will then move your corresponding resource tokens on your tracks on your player board accordingly. Diagonally adjacent court tiles are never activated, and if you produce more of a resource than you have room to store it, then that resource is lost. Storage capacity can be increased when you visit the river, which I will talk about here soon. Also be warned, you will collect resources after the decline tracks and events have resolved, so you might end up with fewer resources than you anticipated, unless you anticipate correctly. This icon on the pyramid lets the player gain 2 resources of their choice, and gaining resources this way, you are not restricted by the decline track, so it is possible to gain a resource that has been exhausted. Again, the court phase is all about gaining resources in the most clever way that you can, triggering events that can change everyone's plans and slowly causing the decline tracks to produce less and less of their shown resource type. Now you are done with the court phase and you will move into the action phase. And during this phase, you will move your totem to one of Copan's 5 sites or stay on the site that you currently occupy, just moving it 1 space forward. When moving into a new site that you're not currently present in, you will move your totem to an entry space indicated with an arrow. You will also need to decide which side of your totem that you want to have face up, the resource side or the point side. When placing your totem, you have to resolve the symbol of the entry space and then you will perform the site's action. If you do not have enough resources to resolve the symbol where your totem was placed on, then you cannot move on that site and you have to choose a different one to go to. If another player is present on the site's entry space, then they are pushed to the next space, and that pushed player does not resolve the symbol that their totem just landed on. If you stay on a site, you will move your totem to the next space clockwise and the symbol it lands on is resolved. This can also push other players on the track forward as well, and you will either gain resources ×1, ×2, or at some sites ×3, or you will gain 2 points at ×1, 4 points at ×2, or 6 points when landing on the ×3. So again, the entry space has you pay 1 resource type that is shown. The ×1 spot lets that player gain what's shown on the symbol of their totem, ×1, and the ×2 means that you gain twice what's shown on your totem, and the ×3 is 3 times what's shown on your totem, either resources or points. Now let's check out these 5 sites. The embassies. You will spend as many resources as required to reach one of the cities and build an embassy in that location. The path between cities show a cost, for example 3 right off the bat, but you can have more if you head south. Plus, building in a city has an additional cost shown on that city. Once both of those are paid, you will place one of your tokens on one of the spaces next to that visited city, and you now have an embassy there. You gain that city's effect because you made a new ally. Next, you draw as many embassy tokens from the embassy chest as you have player tokens in that city. This is 1 when first going there, but later in the game you can go to the same location to then gain more tokens. The effects on the embassy tokens are applied immediately, and then they are discarded. They might give you resources or other bonuses that will help you throughout the game. Now, you can visit a city as many times as you wish, so you'll just stack your tokens on top of each other when visiting the same city. But this doesn't count as another embassy, but it does allow you to gain the city's effect and make it stronger. But the key here is when you want to focus on the embassies, you should try to visit each of the 6 cities, as that will net you 40 points. But doing 5 lowers that to 28 points, while not visiting any of them will give you -10 points, and just visiting 1 will give you -5 points. You will use this chart at the end of the game when scoring this site. Now onto the river. Here, you will immediately gain the 2 leftmost court tiles on the river, and this will help replenish your reserves of your court tiles. Then you can either buy the 2 remaining court tiles or buy a storage extension for your player board. When buying the 2 remaining court tiles, you will spend 1 resource of any type, and then you will take the remaining tiles. If you opt to buy storage, you will spend any 1 resource plus an additional resource of any type for each storage extension that you already have. You will take a storage extension board and attach it to your player board, and you now have more capacity for resources as well as character cards. There are also other ways to gain extension boards throughout the game, like through bonuses from other areas on the board. Also, if you have no court tiles, you might want to come here to get some more. Also, if you have no resources, this is the only site where it doesn't cost a resource when first placing your totem on the entry spot. Now, off to the ball courts. Now, when I visited the ruins of Copan in real life, the ball court is what I remember the most. They said there that when I visited, someone on the winning team got sacrificed for spiritual reasons. But when researching it now, it looks like it probably wasn't true, but sacrifices did take place. But most likely not on the ball court or the ball court champions themselves. Anyways, here you can recruit a character and pay the resources listed to recruit that character, shown on the top left of that card. This card will be placed in an available space on the top of your player board or in a slot formed by an extension board. A token is then placed on the side of the ball court where you took your character from, either right or left. The space where the card is taken is not refilled until the end of the turn. If you recruit a character and are full up on spaces, you can choose to discard one of your other characters. Doing so, you will no longer receive its effects in the game, or if it's an immediate effect, you can trigger it then and there and discard it. Some characters will have one-time triggered effects, and others will have effects that last the game while you have them slotted. And even others, some have in-game scoring effects which activate at the end of the game. There is a wide variety of effects here, and you can set up combos where they give you another action elsewhere on the board, and that action might send you to another place. Essentially, with any of these sites, you can bounce back and forth, and doing this is good as you will, for example, add more tokens onto the ball court to gain the majority effects for the points at the end of the game, and whoever has the most on the right side gets these points, the majority on the left gets these points, and the majority from all of it gets these points here. So keep on practicing on the ball court to get those points. Onto the altars. You will choose one of the 12 spaces available on this site. You will place a token underneath your chosen effect and pay the resources listed on the top of that altar card. You then go to perform the effect that you have chosen. Then below that action shows how many steps you can take on the stairway of the pyramid, and this can be 1 to 3 steps. Once a marker is placed on the effect, it is no longer available for anyone else. When moving up on the pyramid, you will choose which stairway that you want to move up on. You cannot divide up your steps between several stairways. The higher that you move up on these stairways, the more points that you will score according to their listed ways. One stairway will score points for the number of storage extensions that you have at the end of the game. So if you never get one of those, then you won't need to move up on this end of the stairway. But when you do get an extension, then you will either gain negative or positive points depending on which step your priest ends up on that side of the stairway. Another side of this pyramid is for the number of tokens that you have on site 3. So again, if you play on the ball court, you should move up on this stairway. This other side is for the number of tokens on site 4, or the altars, and the last one is for the number of jade tiles that you have placed on your mask board, which I will soon talk about. Either way, you should move up on these sides if you are focusing your strategy in the area where the side is connected with. If not, you potentially can earn negative points. Now also, the first player to reach the top of the pyramid takes the Zenith token, which is worth 14 points, and the second player to reach the top gains 8 points, and the third gains 3 points. You can claim one of these at a time, but if you make it up to the top from 2 different stairways before any other player makes it there, you can claim the 14-point and the 8-point token. Now onto the hieroglyphic stairway. Here, you choose a line and you spin the resources listed, and then you take the glyph cards from that line. These cards are not replaced immediately until the end of your turn. Each column of the stairway also allows players to ascend the steps of the pyramid. You choose the stairway that you want and you move your priest Meeple 1 to 3 steps indicated on that column. You'll be collecting cards, and at any time during your turn, you can exchange all or part of your glyph cards for jade tiles. So you can create your jade mask. But you can only exchange glyph cards once per turn. So you will need to exchange cards of all different colors or all of the same color, depending on the number of glyph cards. You will then receive a different number of jade tiles. And these jade tiles have to be used immediately. Bonus actions can also be granted if you exchange a high number of glyph cards, as you can see on the chart here. Now, the Jade Mask is important as only the most powerful families obtain the honor of creating their own Jade Mask. This is an incomparable symbol of nobility, and the mask is a legacy that will echo through the ages. When building your Jade Mask, you will choose a Jade tile of your choice and place it onto the dedicated space on your Jade Mask board. The first tile has to be placed on the edge, and each subsequent tile has to be placed adjacent to a previously placed tile so that each segment of the mask is connected. After placing the tile, you will take the effect shown on that space. And those are the 5 sites in the game. So once you have finished your site action and any bonuses that you obtain, possibly bouncing around on the board with some sweet combos, or other times maybe just taking a much needed action, then your turn ends, and characters or glyphs are refilled if taken that turn, with court tiles from the river also being replaced if taken. The next player will then perform their turn, and the turns continue in clockwise direction. The game can end in 2 ways. If all available spaces on the pyramid are covered up by court tiles, then the game ends. Or if 2 resources are exhausted, meaning their decline cubes reach the end of their tracks, then the game ends. Players get 1 last turn, and then final scoring is done. You will then have scored some points during the game, but then you will gain a good amount of points here at the end. So then you will gain or lose points according to the number of cities that you place on the embassies, and for each half of the ball court, the player with the most tokens present gains 6 points, and the second most gains 3 points, and the player with the most tokens present in the entire ball court gains 10 points, with second gaining 5 and third gaining 3. Pyramid scoring is done depending on your position on each of those stairways. You can gain or lose points from the number of storage extensions that you have, the number of tokens that you place during the game on the ball court and on the altar, and the number of jade tiles that you have on your mask board. Lastly, if you manage to place all your jade tiles on your mask, then you will gain 10 extra points. And now the player with the most points wins the game. And well, that's Copan Dayan City. Now, this is a super combo generating game where you are specializing in certain areas of the board, but not all of them. Of the 4 areas marked by the steps of the pyramid, you will need to focus on the areas where you plan to work on. If not, you will earn those negative points. So it's kind of a cool thing where if you are strong in one area, you also need to take the time to climb up on the side of the pyramid of that. But when you're not focusing on an area, you can go ahead and ignore that side of the pyramid. And of course, if you're not focusing on those things, then, well, of course, you got everything in between those scenarios as well. Now, when I heard about this game, I was super excited because, well, I lived in Honduras for 2 years, I visited the Copan ruins, and I heard it was a Euro game, so that got me excited about the game. I then looked into the game and read the rules, and I was not really sure, the mechanics sounded great. But don't worry, after playing this game and actually seeing and doing all the possible combos and feeling the tension of different options in the game, this game is fantastic. It gives you that good combo generating turns, but not all turns will be like that. There is a main strategy as far as what sites you focus on and all, but then there are a lot of little choices that you will make up your turns, and those turns will require you to be efficient, which sometimes means bouncing and comboing, while other times it might be just setting up for other turns later in the round. So the mechanics and the gameplay definitely re-won me over and put this game high up on my list. The other thing that is interesting in this game is the way that you can change sites if you want, but if you stay in the same site, you can gain more, gain an extra resource here and there, which can be huge or give you some points. And again, it usually isn't bad for you because usually you are visiting sites that you are focusing on, so why not stay making that place stronger and earning extra rewards while you do so? Remember, most spots you enter require 1 resource payment, but you can do that site's action 3 times with only paying that 1 resource, and then you can stretch your resources further in the game. And again, these resources will be shrinking as the game goes on, so they tend to be important. Now, other players can push you off, which happens in a high player count type game, but that just adds to some of that player interaction. But the game can also be played with that nastiness if you want to play it that way, because players can trigger events to reset things that other players have set up. Again, pushing you off sites so that you can't do that same action that you want to do again. Also lowering resources on the decline track, so a certain type is harder to get. Many of these ways are hidden when first playing the game, but when you get more experienced players playing together, I mean, just watch out, because these things will get intense and the game will get nasty. Now, the other thing unique to this game that I want to mention is the resource depletion that happens. This changes how you play the game, and although there are many actions where you can gain any of the 4 resources, just the fact of gaining less of a number of any of the resources compared to what you are used to getting at the beginning will just affect how you play the game. Anyways, you will be playing and searching for the small things that you need or want to do during the game. And it's a cool thing because you can find your answers somewhere on the board. Maybe it's in the ball court on one of the cards there, or maybe it's in the altars. And both of those sites get reset a decent amount of times throughout the game to give you new stuff there as well. If not those, then drop some glyph cards to gain jade pieces on your mask and gain those missing resources or actions or bonuses and get those things that way. There are a lot of ways to go about getting what you are looking for in the game, and when you find them and combo your way doing multiple things in a turn, it just feels so satisfying, and it will also help you get closer to winning the game. Entonces visite Copan en su mesa con su familia y amigos en Copan, Ciudad Moribunda. Again, this is Boardgame Brody, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around and check out some other board game reviews to see what you might want to get to the table.